before giving that overview, I would like to request the participants who are sitting at the back to please join us on the table so that you also become part of this dialogue. Please, you may join us on the table, please. Thank you. So, without further ado, I would request Mr. Asad Naqvi, who is the Head Economic and Trade Policy Unit at United Nations Environment Program, for his welcome remarks. Sir, over to you, please.
Well, thank you very much, Honorable Minister and colleagues and friends from different institutions. It's a pleasure to meet you all again for the second time in 2 days. It's an honor for UN Environment Program to be here and welcome you all. We have been a very proud and humble partner of Pakistan in its economic and social development for a long time, including many big projects. And here today we are getting together and looking forward to a very constructive conversation on what role circularity can play in economic and social development. It gets into the context where we are basically looking at that the foundation of economy and trade and prosperity are the resources that Earth generates. So the ecological foundation of economy, unless is protected and promoted, there are serious risks to socioeconomic development. At the moment, our economy is very linear. We take, we use, and we dispose it off. So if you look at what the total amount of resources that we are getting from Earth and what is we are able to circular back into the economy, it's less than 9%. So there is a huge waste of resources, that is one side, which has a huge economic cost, which is the second side, which has a huge environmental cost, which is the third side, coming from the waste management side and everything else. And then the socioeconomic missed opportunities which are associated with it. But there is a second side to it. If you look at the Earth Overshoot Day, which is celebrated and observed every year, which basically means that the amount of resources that Earth can produce sustainably are now being consumed in the first 4 months of every calendar year. So it's almost getting to April, by which we have consumed all the resources. So we are basically running an economy which is overdrawing on our natural capital account. And that's where we believe that circular economy can play a big role, where the resources that we take from the Earth are recycled, reused, refabricated, brought back into the economy and create more value, more jobs, and more prosperity for everyone. So our small initiative that we will be discussing today is about the secondhand textiles, where we know that the whole process of textile production, use, its waste, its disposable, has many areas that can be further improved, both in terms of economic sense as well as its socioeconomic benefits. So that is the debate that we are having today, and it's a warm welcome to all of you to look into this area, because going forward we see that textiles and associated sectors of economy are very likely to grow globally. The global economy is probably going to be about $3.3 trillion by 2030, which is just around textiles. How much waste it will generate and how that waste will be managed, that will have a huge cost if not done with good planning. And secondhand textile is particularly important for countries like Pakistan, where it is at the center of the debate on social side, and especially on the poverty side, and how do you provide warm clothes to the poor in the winters, etc. It has economic side, because that's where I think many businesses, small and medium enterprises, individuals, and everyone are connected. And that has an economic side. It's a trade, it's part of the trade, both in terms of import and exports. So a very warm welcome, and looking forward to a very engaging discussions between all of you. We are particularly grateful to European Union for their support to this project, but also to many other initiatives that we are running through the UN's Environment Program. Back over to you, Zainab.
Thank you so much. But before we start, may I please request the participants, the media at the back, to please the media at the back to please, if we are having this very important dialogue, if you can reduce the noise in the room, it's a request. And also to other participants that this is an important debate we are having. So I request the participants to please listen, observe, and do take part. IT team, please, if you can display the presentation. We have also been joined by the participants online. Thank you. Slideshow पे करते हैं, please. Circularity and Used Textiles Trade in Pakistan. This is a project that United Nations Environment Program, in collaboration and support from the European Union, they are doing in different countries, African countries, and Pakistan is also one of the countries selected for this project. So as part of this project, I will be introducing a few, the overall background and objectives. Next, please. Or maybe if I can have the slider. Next, please. Thank you. So we do understand, and I would like to skip this. We have environmental impacts. Asad Saab mentioned 2 to 8% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. The textiles is contributing, 86 million Olympic-sized swimming pools of natural water used by the textile industry. And then the pollution contribution is huge. Then we have different regulations, Paris Agreement, Global Biodiversity Framework, Global Framework on Chemicals that restrict the, this industry to stop polluting and to be more environmentally sustainable. Thank you. Global value chain. So it drives industrialization and development. I'd rather skip the slides on what the global value chain looks like. I'd like to focus on the project. So the project funded by the European Union and UNEP is the implementing body for different countries. Participating countries are Ghana, Kenya, Tunisia, and Pakistan, among world's top importers of used textiles. Pakistan is one of the top importers of second-hand textiles. And then collaboration with governments. Please, thank you. If you can allow us to continue with the debate. Thank you so much. Collaboration with government, environment, trade, industry, and development agencies, policymakers, industry. This is the overall overview of the project. Objective is global guidelines. Now, interestingly, sir, when second-hand textiles are imported in Pakistan, we are mostly importing from European Union, from US, from other countries in the Asia as well, and other regions. What happens is that we get some, they are not sorted. The clothing we are getting, the different items we are getting as part of the second-hand clothing, they're not sorted. And most of the time, the second-hand used clothing and the textile waste is something we are getting in Pakistan. So in the pretext of second-hand clothing, we are also getting textile waste because there is no global criteria to determine the suitability to trade products as used textile. This project aims to develop that global criteria so that whatever we are importing from European Union or any other region, we import it in a sustainable manner, and that does not create problems for Pakistan or any other country that's importing the second-hand textiles. So this is one of the key projects. Now you see the graphs here. This graph indicates how much imports are enhancing in second-hand textiles in Pakistan. Even during COVID, when lockdowns were there, right after when lockdowns were lifted, we can see the surge in imports of second-hand textiles from other regions. It has a socio-economic impact. Key player in global second-hand textile trade, Pakistan imported 433,651 metric tons of used clothing in the 2023 to 24 fiscal year, reflecting a 17% increase from the previous years. This is the stats from Pakistan Bureau of Statistics. Major destination for post-consumer textile waste globally, especially from the European Union, is we are importing. In the fiscal year 2022 to 23, the market value of these imports was around USD 24.22 million. This increased in the fiscal year 23 to 24, rising to USD 40 million. And second-hand textile trade contributes to 38% of Karachi export processing zones exports. We are also re-exporting. Exports from Karachi export processing zone reached approximately $200 million during the last fiscal year. And this sector, it creates 10,000 jobs, and 50% of those jobs are filled with women. I will not take much of your time, but through this project, we mapped the entire value chain of second-hand clothing in Pakistan. That was never mapped before. We gathered that data that has never been documented before. We observed environmental impacts, economic impacts, policy regulations, and there's another interesting debate. There is no policy that directly, gets implemented when we are talking about second-hand clothing. There is no direct policy to address second-hand clothing. But during our last workshop, a representative from Ministry of Commerce said that Ministry of Commerce is in a process of developing a policy draft to regulate second-hand clothing. And we are really lucky to have with us Mr. Mudassir Raza, DG Textiles Division from Ministry of Commerce, who will be sharing his insights also. So this is a value chain, if you all can see. On the top, the first step is we import in bulk. Second-hand clothing items are imported, and then they are unpacked. And on every bale, there is a value, The importers don't open the bales of second-hand clothing, and just based on certain observations, they attach a price to each bale, and then they say that, this is grade A, grade B, grade C, and any bale, it depends on you what the entire bale might contain, but this is a bit expensive. Grade B is less expensive. Grade C is, it has less economic value. And then they sell it to the retail markets, flea markets, or landa bazaars, as we say locally. And then they are also sending it to the Karachi export processing zone, where further these products get sorted, the second-hand clothing. They do the mechanical recycling as well. Mechanically, they sort the products, and then they do the grading. A grade clothing require very little repair or recycling. And then B grade clothing requires somewhat repair and recycling. C grade is something that does, that requires a lot of repair, washing, and recycling. And that is again sent to flea markets by Karachi Export Processing Zone as well. But within Karachi Export Processing Zone, A grade clothing, B grade clothing, they recycle it, repurpose it, and then they also re-export it to other regions. Mustafa Sattar Saab is here with us from Karachi Export Processing Zone, and he will be explaining the processes. And then what happens is that when flea markets, the landa bazaars, when they sell it to the consumers, they buy it, they take it home, they wear it, and when that clothing item becomes unwearable, they give it as charity to the house help or to lower poor class of the country. And what they do they sell it, they shred it, they shred the entire clothing piece, they sell it to the furniture makers, and that clothing item, it becomes part of furniture filling. So we don't have post-consumer textile waste in Pakistan. They shred it, and also they shred it to make it part of furniture filling. Then they also shred it to convert it into a new fabric. So recycled polyester is also something that's being very widely used, but that's one example I'm giving you. There are so many other recycled clothing items that they're doing in Faisalabad. If you go to the Sialkot roads in Faisalabad, there are industries and factories, and there are informal recycling networks who collect used textiles from homes. This is a genuine practice that's happening. Interesting, right? And then, so this is a value chain of how post-consumer waste, there's no waste, I've explained it. Loop gets closed because it becomes part of, it either gets downcycled or upcycled. National policies. There are many policies. Environment from the environmental context, climate context. But when we are talking about textile, we have National Textile Apparel Policy. Then we have certain policies that are related to like Customs Acts, Pakistan Environment Protection Act, National Hazardous Waste Management Policy, and then we have the red channel within the policy. I know I'm being critical here, but the reason that I'm being critical here is I want to generate a debate, because we want to learn what is happening in Pakistan's biggest circular textile sector, second-hand sector. We have finance bill. They removed 10% duty on used textiles for affordability. Then we have red channel, strict customs checks under National Textile and Apparel Policy to prevent misdeclaration. I don't know how much of it is getting implemented. We have the minister here with us. We have Ministry of Commerce, so we'd be happy to learn about it. Then private sector. We have private sector company who are boosting the recycling from the second-hand clothing sector. Challenges: limited access to reliable import data and exporter information, reluctance from retailers and importers due to skepticism about, when we were going to the field, this data has been collected from retailers, exporters, importers, from the Landa bazaars as well. When we were going, we were asking them information. There was a lot of skepticism, and they were not openly providing us the data. But then we said that, if you provide us the data, there are chances that you will see increase in imports and increase and a boom in the market, because we want to showcase the world that in Pakistan this sector is circular, and that's why they provided us the data openly. And that same is the case in Karachi Export Processing Zone as well. We got the data and we are really grateful for their support. Lack of strategic policies. We don't have the strategic policies that directly address second-hand clothing. Insufficient environmental guidelines. Now, as I told you, we are also getting textile waste from other regions of the world. There was a participant during last workshop who pointed out that, dengue in Pakistan, it was never born in Pakistan. We got dengue because of this, whatever we are getting from the containers that we are importing from other countries. So there's a lot of skepticism around it, because our direct policies are not there. Way forward. Policy priorities for circular economy. Interestingly, Pakistan does not have its own national waste management policy. We are talking about post-consumer waste, but we are lacking that policy. We did try to invite Ministry of Climate Change, but they couldn't show up. They're busy for the COP29 preparations, of course, but I mean, this is something that's very important. But these stakeholders sitting here, they're very much keen and they're serious about these challenges, and that's why we are grateful for their presence there. Financing strategies, public-private partnerships, innovative funding models, supporting to startups. There are startups who are, purchasing the second-hand clothing items from flea markets. They are selling it through e-commerce platforms by repurposing those second-hand clothing items, and they are selling it, they're labeling it as pre-loved clothes or pre-loved item, export leftovers. So they need support. Their solutions need support for scalability, collaboration and reforms. Commerce Ministry, we have Maritime Affairs here. We have Climate Change, Finance Division. If these people are not talking about it, collectively, then this is not a case that only one ministry can resolve. So that's why we need a collaborative approach, revision of textiles policy to support this sector, and workforce training programs in low-income regions to support circular economy practices. So thank you. This was all from my end, just to give an explainer on what we have done so far. This is a brief explainer of what we have done so far. I'm going to move towards the panel discussion. And my first, but before panel discussion, we have been joined by Minister of Maritime Affairs, Mr. Kaisar Ahmed Sheikh. Sir, may I please request you for your keynote address, and also if time allows, you have time later on to listen to other stakeholders as well, because the policy recommendations that we will be sharing, we really want the government to look into the recommendations. So, sure.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Mr. Jerry William, from European Union and the sponsor of this seminar. It is a very interesting topic that you have initiated. I myself have been from the private sector and have experience of 58 years of business experience. And these matters which you mentioned, I know in a practical way, I know about it. So there are concerns, you see. It's very good that seminar like this are being held. It will sort out various problems and then it remedies how to find solution. Ajay? So important thing is that textile is a major business in Pakistan. I come from constituency Chanjot. I contested 7 MNA elections from there. And Chanjot, why I mentioned Chanjot? Chanjot is the town, habitants of those, the people from Chanjot are more than 50% in the total trade of textile in Pakistan. So they are the major stakeholders. They have in spinning, weaving, and all those. And this second-hand clothing, our main topic is this. It is a very important, huge amount of goods coming to Pakistan, and then there are various problems which we discussed, and also in Karachi export processing zone. Once the cargoes come, then it is processed and exported to other countries, re-export. Now the problems already identified. Main thing is that in the from the European Union, we are receiving goods that is not much complaints from there. But sometimes in other countries, including European Union, there are complaints that exporters dump those cargoes. There is a pollution in that because waste cargo is also included in the consignments. So that is very important to sort out and then to find the solution that how to tackle this major item of textiles. So we are open to you. Our government is open to you. Whatever problem you identified, there are maritime matters involved. The advisor to Prime Minister, she, I think, attended yesterday dinner. I was informed about it, and she must have mentioned about all these environment matter. But this regarding the business, we can formulate the policy if there are some changes. As far as the clearance of customs is concerned, of course, there are red channels, and most of the second-hand clothing that are subject to custom vigilance and inspections. You are aware about it. So I think that this business can further be increased and enhanced. That is giving, once the second-hand clothing comes, that is giving a lot of opportunities to the below poverty level people. In Pakistan, as we know very well, that 40% of our population is below poverty. That is around 100 million people. Overall, you see, this is a huge percentage of world below poverty population people. So this second-hand clothing is useful because new clothes in the winter season are very expensive. They cannot afford it, and that trade is always enhancing. I have myself been knowing about this trade. I live in Karachi, and I had been a president of Karachi Chamber of Commerce and Industry in 1987-88. And I am very much familiar and connected with all these business matters. And this is the requirement of the people who are below poverty. It is very important import sector. And then there is a various grading. And as you mentioned very clear, I appreciate your elaborate about mentioning all these aspects. And you also mentioned about a Sialkot road of Faisalabad. That is the practical approach. that you know about it, and anything we can sort out about it, anything we can do to make it further improved and to lessen that pollution. That is the major item. I can tell you as a Minister of Maritime Affairs that huge number of containers, about thousands of containers, are stored in KPT and Port Kasam, and no claimer is there. That is mainly the developed countries are dumping those waste cargoes and those of polluted cargoes, and then there is no one going to take it. So we even cannot auction. That is a practical problem we are starting out. I went recently to Atchison port at England, and they mentioned to me that port that whenever there are cargoes coming like this, which have that polluted cargoes, we immediately send back to that. The shipping companies are responsible, but in Pakistan it's not like that. Our ports, a huge number of cargoes are stored, and we don't know in KPT what to do about it. And it's we are sorting out that matter. We will finalize very soon. But this is not this. Many cargoes and containers are even stored since many years. So that that is with all involvement of custom house also, because that cannot be tackled like this. Either it is to be auctioned or it has to be sent back. So this second-hand clothing or waste textile is very important sector, because a lot of our trade is that of textile. We are major textile producing country, but still those cargoes coming from the developed countries. And I think I would emphasize and give most of, as you are yourself here, the attention about it, that the polluted cargoes are creating waste and creating pollution in Pakistan. And we are just going to have in our ports also that green energy, and we are handling to our ships with the green fuel. And also because Pakistan is a major country for the ship recycling. And at present, very important shipping companies of the world, leading companies like Max 9, like MSC, they are interested to invest in Pakistan to have an infrastructure and also to sort out that green energy. That is more important for that. And recently, Secretary General of IMO first time visited Pakistan. He came, has never been to Pakistan, the Secretary General of IMO. About 2 months ago, I went with him to all those avenues where there is a problem of pollution. Pollution is a major problem in Pakistan, and we are converting our ports with green fuel, and also the ship recycling that used to be one time very big business in Pakistan, in Gadani. I myself visited along with the Secretary General IMO. He is very cooperative and he encouraged about it, that we want to convert it into the green recycling. So our ports can provide you whatever facilities you require. I mentioned to you some points that of the which are creating pollution, and our environment is being polluted. So that has to be taken care of. And whatever the problem that customs, that is also being handled. And you can refer to relevant ministries. So if at any ministry there is a point, and as you mentioned yourself here, we will sort out, we will find solution to it. We can have interaction. Whenever you feel, you can visit my office, and we can talk to the other ministries also. So these things are to be taken care of. And I am very familiar with the private sector, and whatever are the problems, I know a lot about it, but how to find solution, that has to be with consensus, with collective. And what are the practical problems, we have to take care of about that. And this is an important forum. Various suggestions will be put in forward here, and then there will be, as our honorable guests are here from European Union. I think they can also understand the problems in underdeveloping countries. So I think gradually the things are being attended, and it will have to be more attention to be given. And this seminar, by attending myself, I understand and I acknowledge you are working with this important topic. I really appreciate that you did so much arrangements like on this topic. That is important, and I thank you very much that you invited me at this forum. I had an opportunity to talk to you. Any particular question you can put to me. I have to go to another forum that is also regarding the business that Rawalpindi Chamber of Commerce Industry new president is inducted, and I have to go into that meeting. But I will stay here for a few minutes. That meeting is 4 o'clock. So for a few minutes, and any question, anything you want that we should further clarify. Our ports, I mentioned that we are all out for those ports to convert it into green fueling, and then to green ship breaking, and also to make environment friendly. That the pollution at our port is huge. That is presently all waste is whatever industrial waste is there, that is being collected there, and we are very vigilant and careful, and we have signed some conventions of Hong Kong so that is I think we are vigorously, up to now there were not many conventions were signed by IMO, but now because of the recent visit of the Secretary General and our interaction with them, most of these problems are being sorted out and being considered importantly.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your offer to address the challenges that the sector is facing, and we are really honored by your presence. And indeed, you have already addressed a few of the challenges that the sector is facing, the customs related, shipping related. We'll be sharing with you this recommendations that we'll be getting from this session, and definitely we'll be getting back to you with our recommendations, and if you can help us in addressing those challenges. So thank you for your time, and thank you for the speech. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for SDPI. They invited me.
No,
I'm
no,
always happy to understand the problems and then to try to sort out whatever is possible. And this is the way
yes,
to have
sir.
a dialogue, frank dialogue between us. And I appreciate that you identified these matters and you thought that this is an important discussion to be held.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. That's all support from UNEP and you that we are able to talk about this challenge. So Mudassir Raza Saab, DG Textiles from Ministry of Commerce. What are the government and stakeholder priorities for textile sector development in Pakistan, both in the short and long term? And how does trade of used textiles align or conflict with the local industries development? I know you have your own first response and reflections towards the presentation as well, but please, over to you.
I would like to have a request leave from you. So nice. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Sir, sorry, एक request है, we can have a group photo after, sir. Please, Mr. Williams, Yulia, if we can have a group photo before the minister leaves.
Sure.
Asad Saab, please, if you can join us. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
सबको सलाम जी, माशाल्लाह जी.
Yes, yes, एक microphone रखवाएं. Mudassir sir, please.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me to this valuable national level dialogue. I really appreciate the working UNEP is doing with the government of Pakistan and other countries to particularly sort out this
That's right.
matter and to define the policies. A very good insight from the presentation that you have given. I just want to share that Pakistan is the largest importer of the used clothing. Around 72% of our imports are from United States and the European Union, and 80% of our used clothing are re-exported back to Africa and ASEAN. These are the two largest, markets for Pakistan. So I was just going through the data set because when we talk about the used clothing, a lot of employment generation, the revenue generation is associated with it, along with the circularity of the complete post-consumer waste. So there was a study done by Federation of Humana in Angola, and as per that study, around 6.5 jobs are created per ton of the used clothing. So Pakistan, our economy, one part is a formal, like we have 78 factories in the Karachi export processing zone, and there are also the informal, facilities in the Faisalabad and in the Multan region. So based upon the exports of the used clothing and based upon the research done by Federation of Humana, it is estimated that there are 2 million, employment generation in Pakistan right the moment. And if I 2 million, and if I include the part of the local economy, it is close to the 6 million people that are associated with this industry. So these are actually the few numbers that are important to gauge the importance of the used clothing. And the second, this used clothing is being used by the low income society in Pakistan, not only in Pakistan and also in the developing countries in the other world. So the presentation, I have taken the few points from the presentation that you have just shared with us. With the introduction of the EU strategy on the circular and the sustainable textile back in 2022, we have immediately started working on the different aspects, including the capacity building of our stakeholders, with the collaboration with our international partners, including GIZ. There's also a regional project with the name of GIZ Fabric, and with the ILO and other international partners. So that when we talk about the informal economy, there are majorly the small and medium enterprises that has to be taken on board for the awareness on the new concept and the new regulations. Then the academia is also on board, both because our major industry is located in the Karachi and in the Punjab. So the academia from the both sides are on board. And further, the Trade Development Authority of Pakistan, that is one of the department of Ministry of Commerce, they are also working to provide the training to the industry. Number 2 point, you have mentioned that there is a need for the incentivization to the industry on the recycling. So let me share with you, around 20 to 30 years back, Pakistan started to incentivize the industry on the sustainability aspects. We have the Export Development Fund available with the Ministry of Commerce. And in the first phase, we have provided them the financial support for the installation of the effluent treatment plants. And this particular scheme is still continued. And it's not related to the textile, but we are working also on the leather sector and other sectors. We are going to establish a Sialkot tendering zone in the Sialkot, where we are working to establish a complete sustainable infrastructure over there. So just for the awareness and the public information, we have this fund available with us right now. Any project that helps to improve the sustainability in the textile sector, Ministry of Commerce will be happy to financially support the project.
So, sir,
And
yeah.
Yeah, please, you can correct.
So just one question, is there any draft of any policy that will directly be linked with second-hand clothing being prepared by the Ministry of Commerce?
Yeah, I'll come on particular this point as well, because there are other things that are coming up under the EU strategy on sustainable and circular textile. So I'm just giving you the overview of what we are doing and what has to be done to further improve in this particular segment. And most recently, we have approved another $1 million project from the Export Development Fund regarding the traceability of the supply chain. This is another project, and there are also the other project like Better Work Program like this. As far as your concern about the availability of the reliable import data, Pakistan single window is already providing the data to the research institutes, and I would suggest you to be connected with the Pakistan single window or Ministry of Commerce to have the relevant data on this particular issue. Further, there are also the international database that are openly available to access the data on the used clothing as well. And the next point was import restriction. I'm just sharing you all the policies in a perspective, because most of the people and the industry are not clear about what kind of policies are available, and we are trying to give them the awareness through the different seminars, different conferences, and also through the different programs that are being operated with our international partner. There is a scheme that has been introduced by Federal Board of Revenue, which allows the duty-free import of raw materials and other products for the re-export purpose. It means if there is any problem of the custom duty, you can utilize this particular scheme. Further, we have the National Tariff Policy Board. If there is specific requirement from the industry and they want that the tariff needs to be rationalized further, the proposal can be put up and to be forwarded to the Ministry of Commerce, and we can consider it for the rationalization of the duties. When we were working on development of the national textile policy, there was one challenge that has been flagged by our stakeholders, that under the under the category of the used clothing, the new clothing are being imported in Pakistan. So when you talk about the red channel, it is particularly in the concept of to limit if something is happening in this perspective to control it. Otherwise, as I have mentioned, something that is contributing in our employment generation or something that is contributing in terms of our revenue generation, we definitely will be there to support it. And now what are the available policies under the because there is a lot of discussion going on the waste regulation under the EU strategy on the sustainable and circular textiles, and there is a particular requirement to submit the details of the waste that is being imported from the EU Commission by the February 2025. A national committee has already been formulated by Ministry of Climate Change, and we are also trying to take on board the president of International Recycling Federation, so that we can formulate we can deliberate on this issue, and we can work together to develop the circular and the sustainable policies in Pakistan in line with the international requirement. So I think I have covered the major part, but if there is any other question from your side or from the participant, I'll be happy to respond.
Thank you. We'll get back to you with another question because there are so many questions from Ministry of Commerce, and we are really delighted to have the right person with us today who is addressing the questions that we'll be doing. So thank you once again, Mudassir Saab. Mr. Williams, my next question is directed towards you. So you're representing European Union delegation to Pakistan. So my question is reflections and overview on European Union's regulations on textiles and in particular second-hand clothing trade, and what are the implications for importing countries? Just to broaden the context of the question, the key elements to strengthen cooperation between Pakistan and European Union, especially in context of second-hand clothing and the upcoming regulations by EU. Your take on that, please.
Thank you very much, Zainab. And my task has been made lighter by the previous speaker. So I'll try to fill in a few elements, but first to say, let's start with the starting point, which is that in the EU, we take climate increasingly seriously. We want to become the first climate neutral continent by 2050 and reduce our net gas emissions with 55% by 2030. But that has implications. And for us, the status quo is not an option. We are basically pushing or accelerating the green transition in the EU, and that you can see when you are looking, and I think the colleague from the Ministry of Commerce already mentioned a number of regulations that are being prepared in Brussels. And they are not only about the second-hand textile, but they go much broader than that. Some people would even say, don't quote me on that, that we have a tsunami of green directives coming. First, inside the EU, you have basically increased need for compliance of companies doing work inside the EU. But as we are indeed in the business of trade, we don't want greenwashing. We don't want, on the one hand, to have a certain rules, standards, regulation applying to our companies that then come in with, let's say, not so clean production that is being imported in the EU. So ultimately, all these rules and regulations, many people can say, so what? This is that's the EU, that's not Pakistan or any other country. Actually, it makes a hell lot of a difference. And we're increasingly in a situation where you would either need to comply or, to be blunt, you die. At least you would not have a market in the EU anymore. So it's not a luxury to work on the green transition. It's a necessity. When it comes to the second-hand clothing, as was very well explained by you, Zainab, it's something that we sort of like tend to focus less on. We tend to focus on textile and the implications of the Green Deal on the textile. We have also dedicated programs on that. But the second-hand clothing is actually quite important for a country like Pakistan. We heard it, it's the leading country in the world when it comes to importing second-hand clothing. And that also goes, when you look at the figures from the EU, we exported, so we think export our clothes from EU to developing world, and it's a growing business. It has tripled in the last 20 years, including 1.44 million tons of used textiles from the EU to Pakistan. Sorry, from the EU to the world, and Pakistan, the first destination of such export, receiving 175 metric tons of such waste. So really the top. And I think that if we think green transition, thinking about circular economy, it's really important in the area of fashion. You didn't mention, but in the previous seminar that we had, we were talking a lot about fast fashion. So unfortunately, there is a tendency in the developed world to use shirts, fashion items, really as fashion items, as disposable items. An average shirt gets worn 7 to 10 times, and each shirt is using roughly 2,700 liters of water. 2,700 liters of water. So can you imagine if we just throw this away after wearing 7 to 10 times, what an impact this has on the environment? And indeed, in the EU, we are producing collectively 12.6 million tons of textile waste. And to reduce this number, we have put in place new rules, including a waste framework directive, which is being prepared to set up extended producer responsibility schemes. And with that, again, the onus will be more and more also on economic operators that need to make textiles available on the EU markets. And we ask them to also be involved in the collection, sorting, and recycling. So EU member states, because these are directives, the EU, the Commission is setting in the broad framework, but then each member state has to, let's say, translate this in their own national legislation. Would have to establish such schemes 18 months after we have adopted these directives. And in 2022, and also the colleague from the Ministry of Commerce referred to that, we have adopted the strategy for sustainable and circular textiles. And this strategy looks at the entire life cycle of textile products and proposes coordinated actions to change how we produce and consume textiles. So it addresses the design of textile products to ensure more durability, so away a bit from the fast fashion, repairability and recyclability, ultimately ensuring and encouraging the reuse of textile products and ensuring proper management of textile waste in the EU. And I'm very happy to see that you are already, let's say, taking action, because indeed this also has implications for Pakistan, and together with the colleagues also from GRZ, I'm happy to hear that you're working on things like capacity building for this. Another objective, and I think the minister alluded to this, is to better understand what happens when textile waste is exported to countries outside of the EU. We want to take responsibility there, and we have adapted a commitment to take much more responsibility for our waste, which is also reflected in the EU waste shipment regulation that the minister referred to, and that was adopted earlier this year. And under this regulation, the export of textile waste to non-OECD countries will be allowed only to countries which officially indicate to the EU that they wish to import such waste, so it's not imposed on them, and demonstrate that the waste will be managed in an environmentally sustainable manner. And in the absence of such a clear guarantee, the EU would not allow such exports. So the project that we were presented in the beginning of this panel discussion, I think is very key to sort of like better put this whole industry, which I was not aware is generating 2 million jobs in Pakistan, much more in the fore. And I think we need to not just wait for the tsunami of directives to come, but start to be prepared to anticipate and to create the right policies through the project, which we see very much as a seed funding. It's new for us. We are working together with different countries also to exchange best and maybe not so good practices, but we see this also as an entry point for potential much more substantial support later on. But I think we need to start by basically having a better understanding of the situation at hand. So this project, which we're happily financing and for which we're happy that UNEP and to SDPI is implementing this in Pakistan, we're very happy that we can start getting this basic framework in place. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Willems. And one of the most important things, as you mentioned, that of course EU aims to be climate neutral and the first continent to be climate neutral, and that's where there are directives coming up, regulations coming up, and of course that's justified. But within Pakistan also, we are trying to work out on those sectors that we think have greater potential to be, to be in alignment with the regulations that are coming in by the European Union. And second-hand clothing textiles is that sector in which we are not generating waste, and that we can own and say proudly. before 2010, we had the number of local textile brands was very less in Pakistan. And Mudassir Raza, I'm sure you will also own this statement that second-hand markets were the only markets that were booming. And even now, after the boom in local textile industry, second-hand markets are still booming because we are facing the economic crunch in Pakistan, and they will keep on flourishing, but only with certain policy support. I think the sector is very much aligned with whatever European Union is proposing in context of regulations as of now. Yes, we might face certain challenges when it comes to, the local textile industry, CBAM, and then reporting. The reporting aspect might be challenging for Pakistan. In that capacity, we do require support from the development partners. GIZ is here, and we are very much getting that support, the local textile industry. I'll get back with a question for you, Yulia, but before that, Mustafa Saab is here with us from Karachi Export Processing Zone, and that's where actual thing is happening. And Mustafa Saab also joined us over on the criteria development workshop that we did a few weeks ago. So Mustafa Saab, first question is that, you're working in a recycling company, and to be honest, we were not aware that this kind of work is happening in Pakistan. So share your reflections on that, and also what policy and trade reforms you think are necessary that can support this industry, this sector in Pakistan. Over to you, please.
Thank you. So there's a number of things. In very simple terms, when we talk about the environment and we talk about used textiles or even new textiles. So yes, new textiles have a carbon footprint, but the reality is that everything in the world pretty much has a carbon footprint. So what we need to look at is which are the ones or which are the processes that have the least carbon footprint, identify them, and then support them and help them grow. I'm very, very confident that I can say that the used clothing industry is not in conflict with the new textile industry. It is complementary. We need to understand that. So while the new textile industry produces products for the developed world, a carbon footprint is created, yes, because that is the process. However, the used clothing industry then closes that loop and makes it circular. That's what we do. We're able to do it more efficiently than anything else. So if I look at this and I say, what are the options available to us today? Because the problem exists today, and it's only going to get worse. So is it landfills? Is it reuse? Is it recycling? That's it. There are 3 options available. There aren't any more. If I look at recycling, only 15%, 15% can be recycled. That's a fact. The question then remains, what happens to the remaining 85%? Guess what's going to happen? It's going to go into landfills in the developed world. So if we did not exist, all of this would be going into landfills in the developed world. That's just a fact. Now, what do we do in very simple terms that others can't do? So there are few different global hubs: Pakistan, Dubai, Houston, Toronto, India, and other countries are now pushing very aggressively to grow in this space. We simply take discarded clothing, but what I mean by discarded clothing is not garbage. It means simply the stuff that has been donated and cannot be resold in the developed world, but it can be used somewhere else in the world. So we are bringing it here, processing it, and redirecting it to exactly where it needs to go, where it can get the best possible price, and where it is not thrown away. That's what we do. And decades of experience have brought us to this point. So once we identify, okay, 99%, more than 99% of our, of the product that we import is reused or recycled. 99+% compared to 15%. So we all want recycling to move forward. Yes, technology has moved a lot, but there's a lot more to go. That's just a reality. Renewcell out of Europe is a prime example. We tried to work with them. They were the premier recycling company in the world. They are today bankrupt because the technology simply is not there. It's too expensive. It's not financially feasible. We all want it to be, but we're not there yet. So what do we do in the meantime, right? So I would just suggest that aside, the Ministry of Commerce just suggested some amazing numbers of the jobs that it creates here, even larger numbers of jobs created in Africa. But how do we support this? So there are a few different challenges that we face. One, amazingly, in the export processing zone, there is currently a ban on issuing new licenses for this business.
Oh, really?
Yes, which is really, really surprising to me. I'm not sure why. If I wanted to expand today, I am not allowed to do so. I don't have a clear answer why, but I would just encourage someone to please look at that, because we bring employment, we process all this waste, we generate exports in dollars, and we don't use electricity, we don't use gas, we don't use water. All the things that are in short supply in Pakistan, we don't use. So I'm not sure if there's a more beneficial business to a country like this. So it needs to be looked at very seriously. So it's been a while. I believe it's been a few years now. Yeah, it's been a few years. So that's one issue. Of course, we've faced other challenges. About a year ago, we were talking about expanding vertically. And I'm just giving an example of our factory. And we were thinking of expanding vertically. 6 months ago, those plans went on hold because the taxation just completely changed. Even though this is an export processing zone, FDI was brought in under certain conditions and certain terms, and overnight, those terms were changed. Now, I understand that that's coming from the IMF and their requirements for taxation, collecting higher taxation, but we have to look at the consequences of that. So factories like ours absolutely stopped. So we're not going to expand anymore. So there are those, real issues that we face. The other one, I think that everybody needs to look at is where do we go from here? So if I look at what makes us competitive, it is the labor advantage, right? So the cost of labor is very cheap. But what does that really mean? Aside from, yeah, it's cheap. A grading facility in Europe versus a grading facility in Pakistan. The cheap labor allows us to use more labor and therefore go through the product in far more detail. So there is much less wastage at the end of the day. A grading facility in Europe is paying so much for their labor that they're having to fly through that product and just moving goods as quickly as possible. The other challenge that you face in Europe, if you just look at the demographics of Europe right now, it's not good, and it's going to get very dire in the sense that aging population, very low, very, very shockingly low fertility rates, massive labor shortages. Those things are going to continue to kind of spiral, right? So what's going to eventually happen is the grading facilities in Europe, the ones who do grade in Europe, will start to shift. I'll give you a prime example. Something happened a week ago. One of our customers who grades out of Europe came to Pakistan, told us, "We want you guys to process for us." Now that's a totally different business model. It's effectively grading and processing for a fee, which is a very interesting new model that comes out of this. There's a whole different angle, and we had to turn him down because he said, "I don't have the labor. This has become too expensive. It's not feasible for me. So we'll give you the business. You guys process for a fee. We'll even supply the raw material." Great idea, but I can't expand. I'm not allowed to expand. So I have to, we literally are turning away business. So these are things that are very real concerns that have to be looked at. Why it was done, is it real, is it not? The efficiency side of this thing is quite shocking. That what we do has actually been done for decades in Pakistan. Recycling of, reuse of used clothing is done by the Pathans in Sher Shah for 40, 50 years. It's become a very cool topic now and a cool kind of thing to say, oh, I'm in the reuse and recycling. It never was before. But even the buttons and zips are taken out and reused. As she correctly mentioned, they take out the threads and create yarn with it. They take out, material and they stuff pillows and blankets and carpets. It is just, all the way down. And a very, very small percentage, when you literally have nothing left, that product is used to burn boilers, right? And even some of the larger textile industry now does that as well. Previously, there were industries using tires, which is far more carbon footprint than this. So even that, we're moving in kind of in the right direction. So the benefits are very clear. The question is only, are we supporting it, and how should we support it? Now, the final thing I would just say that's very, very important that I don't think anyone is really talking about, but our industry is talking about every single day, the China equation. So the rate at which China is selling used clothing into African and South American markets is alarming. In many markets, they've taken over 70% of the business in a few short years. Example, Philippines used to be a massive market for us. Nobody sells the Philippines anymore. It's done. And this happened all in the last 2 years. So it's happening very, very quickly. So what happens if we don't all act, right? All that product gets stuck in the developed world. We are simply not competitive enough from a pricing standpoint with China. We're just not. That's a reality. So the question then becomes, how do we support financially this industry? One is, yes, things like I mentioned, supportive with licenses and things. Do we subsidize things? Do we subsidize raw material? What do we need to do to compete? And I'm not sure, I'm just throwing out ideas. I'm not sure what the right answer is, but it's such a big problem in our industry right now that something needs to be done very, very quickly. Now, one thing we thought about was very similar to carbon credits in the West. Why can't we do something similar with used clothing? So if I look at just countries in Asia and I say, oh, these are new textile producing countries, this is how much they produce, right? And then I look at those same countries and I see, okay, how much do these same countries reuse or recycle? And the countries that do a lot of it, we should maybe increase quotas for the new textiles for those countries. So if Pakistan has certain caps or certain limitations and incentives for new textiles, why can't we look at this angle and say, oh, wait a minute, these guys are doing more for the environment, therefore their quota should be altered or their benefits should be altered. It's just a thought.
Mustafa Sahab, I'm really sorry. I
Sure,
mean,
sure, sorry.
it's a pleasure listening you, and we really want to have this debate extended. But just in the interest of time, I think the kind of solutions, the kind of ideas you have, they're massive and they're also practical. I'm really glad that you were able to fly all the way from Karachi to Islamabad for this debate. Thank you so much. But this doesn't stop here. I'm going to bug you again and again because we would like to touch base with you for our, not just for this project, but also for the bigger policy debate that is now generated. And as Dr. Suleri has taught us to be disruptors, so we are trying to be disruptors with all the stakeholders to generate ideas and debates on those issues that are not being debated. Thanks to UNEP and you for this project. Yulia, I know, Mudassir Sahab, you have responses, and I'll be glad to take your response on why he's not able to expand his business. But Yulia, my question from you first. What are the key, because GIZ has been working in circularity of textile space, you're heading that project here in Pakistan. So what are the key financing and investment priorities to improve used textile recycling infrastructure? And I don't want you to focus on the used textile side only. I want you to share what are the key best financing opportunities that the industry can utilize in Pakistan that you have observed over the years, or any best practices that you are working on to scale up in Pakistan. So, yeah.
One correction, we are not working on financing options. We work on capacity development. Exactly. And also regarding the business models, yeah, I think this is your question.
Yes,
and I'm going to respond to this. One of the important points my colleagues talked regarding the regulations, and we work both. We work with the textile and garment sector, but also with the recycling sector. So we started this journey last year, mapping the second-hand clothing entering Karachi export processing zone, and then what happens afterwards. Yes, and based on this, we also identified a very important cluster apart from Karachi, Faisalabad, where there are many recyclers who process post-industrial but also post-consumer waste. And if we're speaking regarding the current regulations which are coming up at the target markets, if we speak about the US, UK, the EU, a lot now is also being regulated regarding the obligatory recycling content of the fabric of the products. For example, also we speak about the human rights and environmental due diligence, which means that the conditions, the labor conditions and the social standards, environmental standards under which the workers are employed in these sectors are particularly important if we speak about integrated global value chains. So if we have a debate, does Pakistan have a chance to be competitive as a sorter, as a recycler within the circular economy in the textiles and garment sector? we need to also see under what conditions the people work there in this sector. And this is something what you mentioned, that this is a women intensive sector. So for example, in Faisalabad, more than 70% of women working in this sorting, and the working conditions is quite a challenge. So to bring the occupational health and safety, the also vision zero for the accidents, it is important, but also the certification, because when we work with the garments producers, with the textiles producers, their feedback is that we install units for post-industrial waste processing because our customers require us for compulsory recycling content, but we see that we don't have enough resources of gaining the enough percentage, so it should be up to 30%. And actually they import the fabric with the recycled content. And this is actually a great business opportunity for Pakistani producers for the post-consumer waste and for the post-industrial, because currently there is not enough resources there to recycle. And here I want also to build upon what Mustafa said, that the regulations for the export processing zone is set in a way that they have to re-export 80% to stay custom free, and only 20% can enter the local market. And this also creates limitations what can be recycled at all. And then of course another point is the technology upgradation. If we speak about recycling, we speak also about water usage, we speak about the chemical usage if we speak about the chemical recycling, and we speak about energy using if we talk about the mechanical recycling. The technology, what we see now, it's the energy very intensive, it's inefficient. We see that the energy usage is inefficient. We see the labor conditions, we do not comply with the regulations. And if we are talking about can Pakistan become the hub, for example, for the EU to in line with the waste directive as a assigned recycle point, that those topics need to be taken up to promote sustainability, to promote social and labor standards, environmental standards for this industry. So we work with Faisalabad units, we work also in Karachi now to upgrade technology. We create the linkages between academia and the SMEs. We work with the National Textile University in Faisalabad, with NED University in Karachi, with TIP University to upgrade the mechanical recycling, but also to find the sustainable options for the chemical recycling. Because, for example, in Faisalabad, there is no water treatment plan. It means that the chemicals which are used, you can imagine it goes to the water. And of course, if we look into expanding this industry, we need to see that it's expanding in a sustainable way. So they need to be support. And as Mudassir mentioned, that the export development fund is there, the schemes for support. I think it's extremely important that the industry also takes up these opportunities and use these support mechanisms available to upgrade the technology, because the international certifications depend on it. If we speak about GRS certification, it's not possible without water treatment plan. There can be an alternative. You can do sorting based on colors, and then you can you don't need a chemical recycling like bleaching and then coloring again, but it requires also technology. So our work now is concentrating on the capacity development, understanding the sector, improving the labor conditions, bringing more energy efficient practices, looking into the capacity development for also supporting linkages with the research academia to improve. But of course, it's a small portion, and I see that there is a need for more joint action, for more dialogue and more initiatives to support the sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yulia, and thank you for the very relevant recommendations that you have mentioned here. And of course, basic recycling and the challenges you have mentioned from that are coming in from Faisalabad, they are actually challenges. So before I request Dr. Suleri for his remarks, Mudassir Sahab, just I have that question in my mind, why the exporters are unable to expand their businesses. What's the issue? And I would request you, if you can comment within 1 minute, keeping the interest of time, so that everyone is aligned on whatever is being discussed by Ministry of Commerce and the stakeholders here, please.
Yeah, as Mr. Mustafa has mentioned, I, back in 2023, we have taken up this particular issue with the chairman, Karachi Export Processing Zone. And he responded us that as such, there is no ban. This was a stance from the chairman, Karachi Export Zone. But again, we are going to take up this issue, because as you are mentioning, then definitely there will be an issue, and let's talk us again with so that we can sort out this issue.
Thank you so much. May I please request Dr. Abid Suleri, Executive Director, STPI, and member of International Advisory Committee, COP29, for his remarks. Please, sir.
Excuse me, just wanted to ask if there's going to be any chance for a Q&A from the audience in this?
Just
after the remarks.
yeah,
right.
After the remarks, we can take your Q&A.
Okay.
After the remarks, I'm really sorry, but maybe over tea we can discuss it.
Right.
Really sorry.
Well, thank you, Asad Naqvi, the colleague, friends from Genève, the high-ups from Ministry of Commerce, and Sheikh Kasser, Federal Minister for Ports and Shipping, Maritime Affairs, who actually made it a point to join, albeit for a short period of time, but he was here, and distinguished panelist, dear guests. This is an issue that STPI, in collaboration with the UNEP, has been studying just to demystify the myths around import of second-hand clothes in Pakistan, their usage, whether they contribute towards waste and carbon emission, or they are part of circular economy, and its pros and cons. And as the last comment between Zainab and Mudassar told, and both of them, I highly regard them as extremely learned colleagues, and if both of them, they're still not clear whether it would have some sort of benefit or no benefit, or a neutral impact on local manufacturing. That in itself highlights the importance of having such consultation, where we can have all stakeholders and we can have an informed discussion. We should have, as I saw in the panel, an honorable minister who coming from Chennai, a place where textile industry thrives. So we could listen to all of the stakeholders, try to understand their concerns, as well as how they can get benefit of it. One thing that was quite clear from STPI study, and that was almost 100% circularity of this second-hand textiles coming to Pakistan. So our study showed that even till the last rag of that clothing, that gets utilized, if nothing else, maybe to as a dusting cloth in kitchen or in house, but or for the floor mopping, but it gets utilized. The second thing that we found through study, that many of the accessories from those second-hand clothes, they actually are being utilized in the new manufacturing. So, for example, the accessories like buttons and flies and other accessories, they're being used. And even in your export, do you have a stall for the, what do you call it, loved clothes?
Yes, sir. We have a Bisbee stall. Yes.
So in the expo downstairs, there is a stall which is for the loved clothes, which is the second-hand clothes, but they are dry cleaned, they are sort of refurbished, and they are being sold at almost 1/3, 1/4 price than the actual brands are. So all the big brands close. And now this startup, these youngsters, they have actually got now their stores in different malls. In at least I saw it in Islamabad, I'm not sure in other places. So we need to look at it from all perspective, from the local manufacturers' perspectives, from the consumer's perspective, from the place of destination, from the place where it is being utilized. And of course, it can be used as one of the tools for raising your green credits. If it's a processing within country, that can be carbon neutral. So for example, use of your solar panels for energy and various other where we can they can actually prove that they have been reducing its carbon emission. But the last but not least, it highlights the importance of studying this sector and this subject even in greater detail. And we would definitely, the team SGPI, they would carry on doing their empirical research and collect data in it so that we can provide our research-based recommendation to Ministry of Commerce, to the ready-made garment manufacturers, to Ministry of Climate Change, to UNEP, and to all other development partners who are interested in it. Thank you very much once again for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Solari, and apologies for not taking questions. We are a bit, over time now. It's 4:33, and being a moderator, it's my responsibility to conclude the session on time, and it's a 3 minutes delay. So really sorry, but the debate is still ongoing. We have stakeholders here. We have been debating around this issue since 4th November, and we will be compiling all recommendations and sharing with all of you. And around used textile circularity, this is one policy dialogue that we're doing, Nazish. And then on next dialogue, I want to see you, and where we will be developing this criteria, finalizing the criteria, global criteria with African countries. So thank you so much, everyone.
If you can give Sham's email address, so all those who are interested, they can send their comments and questions on that.
Definitely. Please
share your studies with them.
Please do share your questions. Also, we have our expo downstairs. Do visit the stalls. We have local startups and the local food brands, food chain. They're also they're also showcasing their products and offering really delicious delicacies. So do visit and do encourage Made in Pakistan. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.